and welcome to Lip Service, a podcast that adventures around and all down the line with the Rolling Stones. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Simon Harper, and I shall be your host for this series of conversations that celebrate the life and music of the greatest rock and roll band in the world. We've got sights and sounds and marvels to delight your eyes and ears, so join us as we journey down the road of peace, from Dartford days to Hackney Diamonds and beyond, exploring the songs and stories from along the way with friends and special guests.
Today's guest is Stephen Kijak, director of Stones In Exile, the film that documents the Rolling Stones' self-imposed exile in the south of France and the making of their classic 1972 album, Exile On Main St. Stephen is a filmmaker whose work sits at the intersection of his three driving passions: music, journalism and movies. After his 1996 debut feature Never Met Picasso, Stephen then turned his focus to documentaries, drawn to real-world stories shaped by obsession and cultural identity. That led to Cinemania, an affectionate portrait of New York cinephiles whose lives revolve entirely around film, followed by Scott Walker, 30th Century Man, an exploration of one of pop music's most enigmatic and withdrawn figures. As we'll hear, it was 30th Century Man that put Stephen on the Stones' radar and led him to be invited to direct Stones In Exile. The circumstances behind that album are legendary. Recorded while the band were tax exiles in the south of France, amid chaotic and sweltering conditions and drug-fueled parties, it's a story that requires little embellishment, but demanded a filmmaker capable of capturing its atmosphere, rather than adding to the myth. Stephen's work is characterised by a rejection of standard documentary tropes in favour of an immersive experience. Rather than simply retelling the fabled story, Stephen drew on exclusive photography and footage from the time, including that from Robert Frank's infamous Cocksucker Blues film, to create new scenes that blur the line between new interviews and historical footage and keeps the audience absorbed in that sweaty 70s basement vibe. In our conversation, Stephen talks about his first meetings with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, earning their trust and being given full access to the Stones' vast private archives for his preparation. He reflects on speaking with everyone from the Exile story, from band members to friends and witnesses, and how he almost missed premiering the film with Mick at Cannes. That experience would go on to inform Stephen's later subjects, from Jaco Pastorius and Lynyrd Skynyrd to the Backstreet Boys and Rock Hudson, shaping how he approaches access, archive, and the human story behind cultural icons. So let's get straight into his own story. Here now is Stephen Kijak. Stephen, welcome to Lip Service.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure to have you. You've brought so many great stories to the screen. I thought it's about time we get to hear the story behind the storytelling.
Yes, my small story in the big story of the Rolling Stones. Very small chapter, but we're very proud of it.
Well, I want to get behind your own life story and start quite early on. I know music has always been a very big part of your life, but obviously it was film that overcame your other passions to form your career. So at what point did you realize that film was going to be the creative path for you?
You know, it was really almost by accident. I was, playing drums in a rock band in high school and kind of dabbling, but writing was actually more at the center of my academic pursuits anyway, and creative pursuits. But went to school for journalism, found the curriculum a little dry, and when my best friend in the dorm said, "Well, I'm going to be a film major," I went, "Oh yeah. Me too." Just copycat. I just thought, "Oh, that sounds good," and jumped into that discipline and really loved it, and found that it was really where I belonged. Ironically, more with an eye towards being a writer-director. Granted, my first film was a scripted narrative, little independent thing. But soon, documentary opened the door, and I just walked through, and it was where I got into the groove with it, And by the time I'd done a couple films, and then started thinking about making a film about Scott Walker, the great musician Scott Walker, that finally locked together the journalism career and the love of music, and then of course filmmaking. Everything kind of started to pull into focus around that time, And that film was a great success. I mean, the first documentary called Cinemania wasn't about music at all. It's about crazy film buffs in New York City. That really was a big cult hit, and we just went to every festival on the earth. It just, it really was quite extraordinary. It was zero budget film, but it still gets booked around the world today. It's kind of extraordinary that that little weird low budget thing we shot on mini DV still has legs. But yeah, and then I just tumbled into the music stuff and followed the passion through that, you know.
Your first films there, how did your sort of style develop through them? Were you still finding your feet?
Completely. Yeah. I mean, Cinemania was just make it up as you go. You know, I luckily was co-directing with a brilliant filmmaker, Angela Kreislieb. She's German, had been studying at the New School with more of a focus on like experimental video art. She'd made some really out there short films, but she had a great eye, and she shot, and I would sort of guide the production and do a little producing, and we just were a good team. And then she was cutting it, but like coming from more of an avant-garde background, I had the schooling in narrative and structure and story. So it really all around it was a really good partnership. And I think we just kind of, you know, honed our chops like in the field. And then, you know, again with the Scott Walker film, a bigger, more ambitious project, but it wasn't very much learn as you go. Um, I have no idea how we managed to get that done. Yeah, I really don't. It was all private money. Everybody turned me down. Um, you know, no one wanted to get involved. He kind of hadn't had his real renaissance quite yet. We were just at the cusp of it and kind of helped back, push him kind of back into the world in a way, you know. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, we just kind of plodded along and tried to build a project that involved a lot of people and creatives that were already either a part of his world or that we knew he had a fondness for, you know, like filmmaker Grant G, who had directed the Radiohead documentary, had worked with Radiohead at a bunch of bands, and you know was doing video pieces for the Zoo TV tour for U2. I mean, he comes up through a great music scene and music video making and music video art and stuff. So, and he had filmed with Scott a little bit when Scott was curating the Meltdown Festival. So things like that. And then, of course, Grant becomes a pal. You know, we kind of collaborated on the Scott Walker film, and he's the first person I called when I got the job to do Stones in Exile, and he became a crucial creative partner. You know, a lot of it for me is it is like the ethic that I kind of developed playing in bands. You know, it's putting the team together, making sure everyone's vibing in the same way. Um, and you know, you want to make it like a little family and creatively feed the subject. So yeah, that's kind of how it all happens, or happened, shall I say?
It's interesting that you say that you kind of found yourself making documentaries. I know that you studied at Boston University under Ray
Mm,
Carney, who's a vocal
yes.
critic of kind of commercial conventions in Hollywood. And film
Hmm.
for him, I think, was about truth seeking. Is that something that seems to have influenced the fact that you went into documentaries?
Oddly, no. I mean, you know, he taught us Cassavetes. Like he had the 16 millimeter prints before they were kind of reissued on VHS. And I'm a little older, and it was just that we were just that generation who was just kind of rediscovering John's work. Um, but that was sort of at the foundation of a lot of my motivations. But you do look back and you go, oh, yeah, of course, it's all part of the DNA of what you do. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you know, documentaries sort of found me. But then you sort of, you know, you pour all your stuff into it and figure out what do I have in my toolkit that's going to make this thing work? And, you know, it's funny actually, even just on this last film we did recently, the Rock Hudson documentary I did for HBO. My longtime editor and I were sitting there, and I just stopped for a second. I said, "Do we do this right? I'm like, do we actually make these things the right way? It's like we've just been blindly going forward for years, making it up as we go." And I mean, she's like, "Oh yeah, I think we're good." Like, don't question it, But you keep questioning it because it does feel like, you know, every time you're reinventing the tactic
Yeah,
to
and I
suit
think
the
documentaries
project.
themselves evolve as well, don't they, over time? There's different ways of presenting things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not one of these, run and gun in the field kind of social justice filmmakers, although I'm more and more trying to pull in meaningful social foundations and issues and social meaning to the projects to actually try to speak to larger issues in our culture. But I like the pop culture music space. I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of stylistic exploration you can do, just given the subject you're assigned to in a way. I mean, a lot of these films have just come to me as work for hire. I haven't necessarily been a fan of all of the subjects, but that's kind of great as well because then you get to discover something. It becomes a real challenge to figure out how to really get inside these stories. I mean, the Stones thing was just like unbelievable, out of the blue, kismet, you know, um, truly like a crazy moment when you kind of your eyes pop out of your head and you're like, wait, who wants me to do what? What now? There's an email from the Rolling Stones. Okay. I'll take it. Sure.
So, is there a personal connection there? There must have to be something that links you to the subject. Even if somebody approaches you,
Oh
what
yeah,
makes you
yeah,
say
yeah.
yeah?
Of course. Well, I mean, my God. Well, that one, I mean, Stones in Exile. Who wouldn't say
That's a
yes to
no-brainer,
that?
right? Yeah.
No brainer. No, it's really like just an opportunity. A lot of the times, um, well, with that one, I got very lucky in that the producer was John Batsack. He was already attached, who has a long storied career in documentary, kind of one of our greats. The company was Passion Pictures. They already had two Oscars on the shelf, one of them for One Day in September, and then the other, excuse me, for Searching for Sugar Man.
Mhm.
So it was already enticing to think that I could work with this great team. And then of course it's the Stones, and then I get to like pull in these amazing creatives. So a lot of it is really I look at like, well, who's involved? Who's coming at me with this story? Oh, it's a producer I love, or it isn't it's a band that I've admired and would be honored to work with. Um, Really, from Stones on, I mean, Passion Pictures and I ended up collaborating on, I think, at least five films in a row. After that, I cheated on them once and worked for Pulse, but then we kept working together, and now we're looping back. John's got a new company. We're about to start a new one. So it's a lot of it just comes from the team. Like if it's a great team, um, it's almost doesn't matter what the subject is. You know what I mean? Like we'll do something great, just give us the room to do it.
I suppose that extends from your journalism background as well. Speaking as a
Hmm.
journalist myself, you have to be subjective about things, and also you find yourself moving from kind of project to project, and you have to get up to speed pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, completely. I love the research part of it, and immersing ourselves in these worlds like Leonard Skinner, case in point. I was like, you want me to do what now? Like that's so not me. I'm like a, New England 80s kid, Southern fried rock. Okay. And my God, we got stuck so deep into that and fell so hard for the records and the story and the characters. And, my editor and I were just shooting Jack Daniels every day at the start of the day and offering up a toast to the spirit of Ronnie Van Zant and like to keep us correct. And like, we spent a lot of time uh, down in the South tracing the story and getting a feel for the land and the the environment and the people, and it was an excellent experience, and the film came out great. So yeah, you just have to approach it like that and open up to it each time.
Well, before Stones in Exile came along to you, what did the Stones in particular mean to you, or Exile on Main Street? Was there a particular passion there?
Well, it's funny. I always liked them. Again, I mean, honest, but one of the first 45 singles. I'm 55 years old. So, I'm a little bit young to have them hit, you know, that first wave of those 70s albums, but they were always in the background. The first Stones that I remember really being taken by is when I started hearing stuff from Emotional Rescue on the radio, and it started. That's when the bell rang, and you go, "Ooh!" Like, it's funny when Benicio del Toro ends up as one of the interviews, inexplicably in the film. Don't get me started on the talking heads. Um, but that was his first one too. Like, we were the same age. He was like, "That's the first one," and then you go back, and then you go forward, and like, but there's something about that era and that record that just really can bring me back, and it's so vivid, and like I can remember hearing it, and I can remember being in the back of my parents' car when it was on the radio. You know what I mean? It's just like it has so many sense memories connected to it. And then I think one of the first 45 singles I bought was the little Start Me Up 45 with the crazy hoof artwork on it,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
which was so at that age. I mean, what year was that now? I'm forgetting. Um,
Start
but I
me
mean,
up
I
about
was,
81, 82.
yeah, I was like 10, 11 years old, and like, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? It's like it's so intriguing, and then you just start finding the records and going, oh, there's more. Oh, look how much more, and like, wow, and like I just even the artwork as a kid, I was so into records, and I like clicking back and looking at discographies of any band, any age, and you start going, oh yeah, I remember that in the record store. I remember flicking through the bins and just being hypnotized by the imagery and starting to buy them at random, before you really learned about them. And then getting Sticky Fingers, and I think we bought Made in the Shade, one of those greatest hits records, just
Yeah.
playing it to death. Um, Weirdly, Black and Blue was one of my early ones. It's like, oh, what a,
Everybody's got those
what a,
different in
it's
points, don't
so
they?
strange. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just start hoovering it up. And then eventually you get older and you start getting serious about your music, and things start lining up, and you go, okay, this is that period. This came here. And oh, Mick Taylor's on these records. And the pieces start making sense. And oddly, it took me a while to get to Exile. It was kind of a big, scary, sprawling, strange
Hmm.
record in my imagination when I was younger. Um, but yeah, there are those records that seep in, and they start, it takes you a little while to assimilate, but once you do, it's endless. Like, you can listen to it a million times and still not completely understand it or get tired of it. And you're always finding something new in it. It's always fresh. It's always an exciting journey through it. So I came to that one later in life, to be honest. And then sort of drifted away from them a bit. I got really heavy into different kinds of music. So when this came around, it was really exciting to like just dust it all off and like just dig way back into it all again. Um, and realize how much story there was to work with. And how much the music itself tells the story. That's what's exciting about these projects for me.
So when it was presented to you, it had already been, there was the roots of an idea there. And so they were coming to you once it started rolling. How was it presented to you?
Well, it was like we're going to reissue the record. We want to make a film about the making of. It's an hour. It can be only an hour. We have a slot on the BBC. We have a slot on NBC. waiting for it. So go. You know
Right.
what I mean? It was just like, it's already ready. Here's the producer, full access to everything. Take it away. That was really the brief, honestly. And, get, I had to meet with Mick and then meet with Keith and get approved and hired. And I honestly, to this day, don't know how any of that happened.
How did that conversation go? You met with Mick in Paris, right?
I did, yeah. I mean, honestly, the way it to wind back. I mean, honestly, it was really a guy who had seen the Scott Walker film at the Tribeca Film Festival, uh, who's no longer with us. This guy, David Saltz, who was sort of like a jack of all trades, this real like he worked for television networks and sports teams and theme parks and rock bands, and he just sort of did all this. It's I still to this day don't know exactly what his main job was. He just seemed to have a hand in so many things and know everybody. And he just gave me his card after the screening, and we stayed in touch over the years. Um, and then I would just check in from time to time. And then out of the blue, an email from Victoria Pearman, who runs Mix Company, came to me. And it turns out he was friends with them, and they were kind of struggling to find someone to take on the Exile project, which is inexplicable to me, but they needed a director. And somehow they talked to him and he said, "Oh, I got a guy. I know who you should call." And it was him. He put me forward. I learned later. And so it was really, years of persistent networking came to fruition in what seemed like a completely, out of the blue chance experience. So yeah, that was it, and talked to the producers, went over, met the team, went to pair. I couldn't even tell you how the conversations went. I have almost no memory of either of them. I was in such a state, you know what I mean? You're just trying not to sound like a complete idiot, and just pitching a general idea of it as like a memory film. Like we did want to keep it in this completely sensory place. Um, and Mick had said sort of up front, no wrinkly old people in the movie. He didn't want it to be just like a retrospective vibe. We wanted to keep it in the feeling of the times and just use archive a very limited collection of things to make it feel very specific. And luckily, they keep everything. They save everything. Uh, so yeah, there were some really specific materials that were able to give it a unified feel, which is great.
Just going back to the meetings you had, do you feel like you had to present or pitch yourself differently between Mick and Keith, or was it the same pitch?
Oh, totally no. I mean, Mick was the boss, and it was just the more sort of proper meeting. And Keith just like, okay, what's going to happen here? Like he just was so loose, and it's just a completely different vibe. And you're all you're thinking is like, am I cool enough for Keith Richards? Like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like, you just have, like, be cool, man. Like, just be chill, casual, be confident with the idea, and try to connect with the man. Like, I don't know. It was I met him in New York. I remember being so hot that day and I was so uncomfortable and stressed out. But he was chill as hell. Like it was a very laid back chat. And he just, like, I don't even know what he said, but he seemed to be enjoying the experience. And then, three, two, one, like, bing, you got the job. Like, they think you're fine. Like, all right, off you go. Yeah, it was crazy. It was really, and then just before you know it, you're off and running and you're doing the thing. So It was great. We got to interview all of them, and everyone was really open. And I'm a drummer, so obviously meeting Charlie Watts was a dream come true. And yeah, it's a trip. It was such a great experience, and it happened so fast. We had about 8 months, I think, to do the whole thing from start to finish. So
You mentioned the archives there. You got to go and visit the warehouse in London, right? They had what, 30, 40 boxes of footage. What was that like?
there's, I think, multiple warehouses. There is one. It's literally like you can imagine, like they put the hood over your head and drive you out to this
Sure.
secret location. We didn't know where we were going. It's way the hell out of the city. Um, it's this massive building that has just everything in it, like their original backline, all Charlie's drums, boxes and boxes of personal items. It's like a little mini museum archive. You know what I mean? They've just got all their stuff very well organized. The guy that ran the facility, great bloke, can't remember his name, but he had worked there forever and they were in the process of continuing to catalog and organize everything. But he's like, hey, you want to look in that room? Sure, that's all the costumes, have fun. He just gave us a great tour. There's like a whole room of every single outfit. Keith, Anita, Mick, all of them, just all they, like personal wardrobe, stage
And you must get
costumes.
frisked every time you leave, right?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. But I mean, just being able to you're like, oh, there's the blue jumpsuit he's wearing and on that tour. Like, it's just right there. Oh my God. These clothes are just historical objects. And there was a whole room, temperature controlled vault full of film and video assets. And that's what we were after. And we were really there to just grab what we thought was a nice clean print of Cocksucker Blues, the the documentary that oh my God,
Robert Frank.
Robert Frank. I just drew a blank. Sorry, Robert. That Robert Frank made, and the rare band, never rarely seen. So we just thought we were going to grab a nice 16 print and do a clean scan of it. But lo and behold, 30 plus boxes, all labeled Cocksucker. I'm like, what the hell? 30 copies of it? And the guy was like, I don't know, take it. And it was all of his work print that the reels of footage, the
Yeah.
raw stuff. You could not believe it. The post process, very controlled, very high security. Unfortunately, I was not able to squirrel away a hard drive of copies of any of it myself. But that was a jaw-dropping discovery. And just to be able, I mean, you know, I'm the director of the film, but I think of it more of like I got to remix Robert Frank. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I directed it, but I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. You know what I mean? Between him and Robert Tarley's photography and all that stuff, it's just wow to be able to work with that material. And granted, it's of the tour that followed the album, but there's enough in there that you just start weaving it together. And you know, the
But
pool,
it's the times,
it's
isn't
the
it? And it's the
times,
look and it's the vibe.
everything. I mean, the pool at Marshall Chess's house in the Hollywood Hills might as well be Nelcott in the south of France. You know what I mean? It's like the light and the palm trees, everything. It all felt of a piece. So you could just kind of all weave it together, and there's your story, and we are going back and forth in time and getting into the music and with the country vibes of the record. You've got all this great footage of the South, and it was so cool to find all that stuff and to be able to excavate imagery that hadn't been seen before and to repurpose it and have it tell a different kind of story.
I mean, the Stones had famously tried to suppress that film. It was very controversial, the documentary Cocksucker Blues.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
feels a bit strange that if they've got all that material, why they've never tried to create a version that they're actually happy with, and it could be recycled.
Well, I mean, we did it here, right? I mean, this was the opportunity to do that. Um, Granted, because the target was like prime time television, we had to kind of be judicious with some of the images we chose. Certain things
Absolutely,
had
yeah.
certain things like, mountains of cocaine backstage and whatnot had to be sort of excised from our final cut, sadly. And there was it's just such cool footage. It's like, God, who cares? Everybody knows you did all that stuff back then. What's the big deal? But yeah, it was an incredible document of the time, right?
You said that it inspired the kind of aesthetic that you guys were looking for. I know that Grant G used the same kind of 16 millimeter camera that Robert Frank did for
He
when you were
did, he
doing the
did.
interviews and the dramatic recreation. So how did that shape the tone of what you were shooting?
Well, that was that. I mean, it was just so happened, that Grant was, said, well, oh, by the way, I own two Scoopik Canon 16 cameras. They're the old news cameras that Frank used to use, and he has two of them. So I'm like, well, great, let's shoot a bunch of that. That's our way through, and because we didn't. I mean, we shot the interviews proper with on a nice digital camera with a proper setup, but we didn't use any of it. They were kind of there to sort of for archival purposes. What Grant would do is once we got everything lit and set up, he would just start shooting off frames with the Scoopik of the film of the 16, just to get those blasts of sort of impressionistic footage. Keep blowing cigarette smoke through the lights. And just they were just gorgeous bits that help bridge you back to the past. So
But it
that
also
was it,
keeps it
and
quite cohesive as well. It keeps you kind of
keeps it
trapped in the moment.
totally trapped in the moment. And then we just decided to then take a trip to the south of France and shoot a bunch of stuff. We tried to crash the house, totally impossible. But we did take a boat and buzz around, and there's like a reel of color that we shot, color 16 that you can see, where we're kind of floating up on the house, trying to get close to it and just shooting, atmospheric stuff around the area. And then we did some little recreations. Maybe I kind of now agree with Mick that some of them were maybe a little too on the nose, but they're nice. I mean, it was atmospheric scene setting. But we did kind of recreate the basement just to create bridges through some of this material.
Because you didn't have
And
that kind of footage, right? So it's just to
no,
give it a
no, not
sense
at
of
all.
being in the studio.
Yeah, there were only stills. And if you didn't know better, some people have said like, "Wow, you found film of the house. That's amazing," and because it's just all stitched together. Then you cut to the Marshall chess footage, which looks like that could be upstairs or in the backyard, and or whatever it is. Um, the Robert Frank footage of Marshall Chess's house is what I meant. But like, you know what I mean? It just I like how it works. I know some people argue that like, oh, you're faking your archive and tricking people. Like, come on. You know what I mean? It's a mood, it's a vibe piece.
Yeah.
It's just a scene setting. And everybody does it now, but I like doing it with a little more intention, like
Yeah, I mean, I
it
feel like
just
Dominic Tarley's pictures are unique. He's got
oh
access that no one else had, and your kind of recreative scenes just kind of brings them to life a little bit, just adds another dimension.
yeah, you have to kind of get in the middle of all that stuff and try to it's just creating bridges through the material, to keep people engaged and to keep the flow of it all going. The girls singing, the backup singers on Just Want to See His Face. It's like those are friends of ours. We shot that here in LA in a little basement, with one light. And then I sent a friend around LA to shoot some stuff for us on 16 that gets all folded into that chapter of the movie. So yeah, it was a cool patchwork of stuff that all feels of the exact same time. Yeah, don't know how we pulled that off, but it worked.
At the very beginning, we see Mick and Charlie in present day. They're stepping back into Olympic Studios, something Mick says he didn't want to do. But then he kind of almost diminishes the significance of his work by saying, calling it boring old recording sessions and asking who gives a shit. I know that
Who
Mick is
gives a
he's
shit?
very averse to nostalgia. So how difficult
Yes.
was it you to get him to open up about the past?
Oh, this whole thing was his idea in the first place. So I mean, not hard at all. Um, yeah, not hard at all. I mean, he puts on that was, of course, boring. Oh, let's go back to where it all started. Something we said we'd never do.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was a good way to open the door to it. Like again, we're not shooting your traditional walk and talks. It was really just a stylistic brushstroke to kind of open the door to the past. And I love the edit. I mean, it's one of those little things where when my editor, Ben Stark, who's brilliant, just brilliant guy, found that one little piece of archive of Mick and Charlie going on stage, and it just sort of matched them walking through a door and blah, 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 whatever. It's a beautiful little ellipse, back into the nostalgic stuff, into the past. That was the idea, to just create these little bridges that constantly brought you back to it. So that was just fun to be in that studio for a minute,
I bet.
because it is a historic place.
And it was funny how the memories then started to take different directions. We hear the Stones recounting the circumstances of their leaving the UK for France in 71, and we get different perspectives. Mick and Bill Wyman, they frame it as a tax necessity. They were facing the 93%
Mhm.
tax. They were going to owe vast amounts of money. And then Keith romanticizes the outlaw lifestyle. He's saying that the British establishment were scared of the Stones' popularity and power.
Mhm.
And I was wondering whether you had to navigate kind of contrasting narratives, different memories.
Not really so much navigating. It's just is taking them on. I mean, that's the fun of it, isn't it? Everyone's got a slightly different tack, way through it in their mind. Um,
Sorry, I think it's also how they processed it too, because leaving,
mhm.
uprooting life, and they probably just had to take a different way to cope with it.
Oh, completely. I mean, Bill Wyman, he just misses PG tips,
Yeah.
and then Mick would be like, "Oh God, Bill and his PG tips," moaning on about Piccadilly and whatever. Um, and you can just see how these, obviously Mick's got, is marrying Bianca, they're in Paris a lot, and he's the international jet set character, and Charlie's just like, "Oh, fuck, I hate living out here. I want to go home." They're just very different personalities. Um, but to have it all come together in that environment, I mean, it is the great. It's just one of the great stories in their history, and look what happened, right? Look what
Absolutely.
happens. I mean, it's just magnificent.
I mean, it's a bit of a gift, isn't it, in terms of documentary making, because there's a
Mm,
ready-made story behind it. It's not just they went into Olympic studios and recorded an album. I mean, there's a
mhm.
vast backstory to it and, consequences.
Fast backstory, great secondary characters, incredible location, time capsule, one album that is an epic among album. It's one of the towering works of modern music, and you don't have to tell the cradle to grave story of a band or an artist. It's like you just have one window into a time, but then also it is about the times and the place. It really it's like the story is has a short span, but it's got so much depth to it. That's what I like those stories most of all, really.
Yeah. And in terms of adding to the vibe or preserving the vibe, you also use audio of like studio outtakes, chatter. You can hear them talking between the songs. How
Mm.
did you approach the sound design, and where did those things come from?
They came from them. They were in the process of remastering and doing this big reissue of the record. Uh, they had been archiving all the audio and going back to everything and combing through all the sessions and all the stuff. So it really was just like, hey, can we get the chit chat bits, please? And someone just went bloop, bloop, bloop. off, a disc or a drive came and here it is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They just had their guy pull it all because they were in the middle of doing it. So, and there was just hours of it. It was great. I mean, they rolled on everything. I mean, you see Beatles films and it's all that stuff. You know what I
That's
mean?
right,
Like
yeah.
every band at a certain point is gonna, they have this kind of archive. It's not that it felt unique and special to have it, but it's just I don't know if it's like become a cliche ingredient in these kinds of films or if it's just kind of what you expect, and it's like it's great to have it. Um, and maybe, some bands didn't bother to do it. I don't know. It was just cool to have it because you really do, you realize you're like, oh, we are in the basement. This is them working the shit out. And it was, occasionally I think we got, I'm gonna forget now if it was Tumbling Dice or one of the tracks where you kind of start hearing, you know, the beginning of it, and Charlie's screwing up the drums, and Keith is shouting at him, and do it again, and it's
Yeah.
like, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, it's coming together, and that's it. That's it. We're in the room for it. It's really, really cool stuff.
It's such a double-edged sword, though. As a fan, you listen to it and it's incredible to hear. But of course, the other side is you want to hear more of it. Like it would be great to
No,
get
I
an
know.
anthology in the way that the Beatles did, is to hear the stuff that wasn't on tape, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, I don't know. I mean, we may have squeezed it dry. I say that now, like, oh, there were hours of maybe there weren't. I don't. I do remember the things that I was most heartbroken about leaving on the cutting room floor were more sequences that we had cut with the Robert Frank material. I mean, the audio. I think we used the best bits we could find.
Yeah,
I don't believe there were any like gems that we said, oh God, that chatter would be amazing if only and it's like there's enough space, I think, to kind of sprinkle it throughout. Um, it's more the film stuff that I thought was just incredible.
one voice that is very welcome treat is that of the producer Jimmy Miller. I mean, he died in
Yes.
'94, and there's not really that many sources of him being interviewed, let alone talking
Mhm.
specifically about the album. Was this audio part of their collection as well, or just something you found?
I think we found it. I think our archival producer turned it up. I can't be certain. I cannot remember. I feel like it was just something that was from some radio documentary, BBC archive thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Hmm.
just sometimes you just cannot for the life you remember where these things come from. Uh, but that was great. I mean, we really needed to have him,
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
find him and to get him in there somehow. So I'm glad we found that piece. Yeah.
And out of everyone that we do hear from, it's quite evident that Bobby Keys enjoyed himself most when he was reminiscing. Was he as much fun to talk to as his dialogue suggests?
Oh my God, we visited him in right outside of Nashville. And oh, it was great. Yeah, I think his wife had made like we had to have like a piece of rum cake or something. Like there was some baked goods for us, and he was just so jovial and fun to talk to. Um, yeah, it was brilliant. Like Bobby Keys, such a dude. Rest in peace. Yeah, one of the most fun interviews, and it comes across right. I mean, he's
Yeah.
hilarious. To this day, I mean, at that moment, right? We're talking like 2009, 10 when we were shooting. Um, he was still so full of life and excitement for the time. It brought back such vivid memories for him, and he was just great to talk to.
You did interview everyone that was there, all the band and the main players, but was there anyone that you wanted to get that you couldn't get?
Well, we ended up slicing out a sequence about Graham Parsons,
Oh, right, of course.
which breaks my heart,
Me
because
too.
I, I, I mean, I don't, whatever. I didn't really want to put the top and tail talking heads in. I feel like that time could have actually gone towards the Graham Parsons sequence, which was not that long. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
thought quite important. Um, but work for hire. I was not Someone else is pulling the strings ultimately. So, yes, we'll just leave that there. Not necessarily my decision, but you make compromises along the way. It's just inevitable.
I think it is an important point in the story, but maybe it's a side thing, something that fans would appreciate. Because I mean, Graham Parsons' impact on that record was huge in terms of the country influence that he was sort of bestowing upon Keith. But yeah, it might be a bit of a distraction from the main story.
Not really, though. I mean, he was a madcap character and part of the entourage, and him and Keith really had a great bond. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's, even to this day, Mick doesn't want the focus moved off of their creative partnership. I can't imagine why anyone would care at this point. He's such a significant musician. And they are all about influences. And that whole album, it's country, it's blues, and they're very upfront about the blues impact and the artists that influence them,
Yes.
and here's a living artist himself who is himself kind of changed and transformed how we listen to and understand Southern music, and modernized it, but was a classicist and a completely free and wild figure in music, gone too soon, um, who moved through that experience and left an imprint on it. So
Mm.
it would have been nice, and there's pictures, this we had the goods, but say la vie.
You mentioned that things had to be sanitized a little degree because it was going on the TV. We all know that there was excess there. There was a lot going on. There's a lot of drugs going on. But at the time of the when the movie got released, Mick said when he was promoting it that actually, it was a very pleasant place to live. So as a filmmaker, I suppose you've got to show that balance. The band are working in a paradise environment, but there's some
Mm.
bad shit going on. So you kind of had to show both sides of the story, right?
Well, yeah, and I feel like Anita was the one that really helped ground that notion.
Right.
They weren't ignoring the fact that it was all happening. I mean, Keith talks, I could talk about it, which was, I'm glad they were at least, upfront about talking about the drug dealers and the smack and the darkness, because it does take over at a certain point. But I think we had to just go right up to the line and not cross it in some ways. I know there's a lot more. I mean, I've read everything you can read about it. And if, I'm sure fans have done the same, right? Like, all the stories. And there's different ways through it, and certain people are portrayed in certain ways. I just wanted the players to tell their stories, have their piece, and try to set the stage for it so you could at least feel some of what they were feeling. Um, and clearly, we've got barely 60 minutes to plow through this whole story. So you're kind of always stuck having to abbreviate and shorthand certain things. But I feel like at least there was an honesty to some of it. And I loved that we had um he's an actor, was a young boy.
Oh, Jake Weber.
Jake Weber. Jake. Gee, I told you this was a long time ago. Uh yeah, Jake. Like I can't remember how we figured it out and found him, and who tipped us off that actually Jake television's Jake Weber was like a little 8-year-old drug runner, scampering about in Elcott, with his father, the international smuggler. Such a cool story. Like that kind of stuff. Just I'm like, wow, amazing insights that he remembers it all from that perspective. I love that so much about that story.
But you're right about the whole thing being mythologized.
Hmm.
Exile is a symbol of excess, freedom, creativity, and all this kind of stuff. But did making the film kind of shift your own perception of what that period was actually like versus how it's been remembered?
No, it just made me want to have been there.
A time machine.
It just was. I mean, it's just so cool to live in that headspace for a while. Um, partly what you're doing is you want to, and I definitely had this with the Scott Walker film, is you're making myth. You want to understand it and create something that examines and informs, but you don't in any way want to tear it down,
Yeah.
In many ways, you want to leave the myth and the mystery intact, and at the same time have been able to find insight and communicate something to an audience that, they might not have known or might not have experienced in that way, you know. Is there a way that you experience the film and it's like you're hearing something for the first time, or like you haven't quite seen it this way before? Even if you know everything there is to know about it, this is going to be a really cool journey through it. Um, you know what I mean? Like that's sort of, you're trying to have it both ways and kind of experience both of those things simultaneously.
Yeah. In the film, Charlie attests to Mick's how shall I put it, kind of perfectionist methods of
Mm,
control. He's always moving forward. He likes putting the work in, but he doesn't like the finished thing, Charlie says. He says he won't
hmm.
like this when it's finished. So did Mick actually like the film once you'd finished it?
You'd have to ask him. I truly couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't know, but they certainly moved forward and went on and made Crossfire Hurricane,
Yeah.
which oddly incorporates some of our manufactured archive as if it was archive, and it ends up in that movie. So I'm like, okay, have at it. Why not?
Fittingly for an album made in the south of France, you premiered at Cannes and Mick presented it on stage. What do you remember about
We
that day?
did. Oh, it was super cool. I remember that our driver took a wrong turn and got us almost lost, and we were a little late. So, I mean, Mick went on ahead, and we were all in the other car flipping out. But we made it. We got through. That was crazy. I mean, they shut the street down. It was mayhem. Um, it was awesome. I mean, it wasn't like a Grand Palais premiere. We were at, we're in Director's Fortnight, which isn't a, it's not in the big one, but it was in like a nice big cinema. And yeah, man, freaking premiering a Stones movie in Cannes, like it does not get any better than that. It was wild, really, really cool. Party on Paul Allen's yacht afterwards. I mean, like what? And I think, of course, these things don't make you a lot of money. So, I'm in Cannes on a shoestring. Yes, they reimbursed me later, so I had to like, oh my goodness, it was a white knuckle experience, but I wouldn't trade it. It was really quite incredible,
When
you
it came
know.
out on DVD, it included extra interviews and stuff. Did that help to make up for what had to be left
Oh
out the
yeah,
final cut? The fact that it was restricted to an hour, now you've got more stuff.
I totally forgot about that. I'd literally have to dig the DVD out and look at it. Oh yeah, maybe I think those interviews. I guess the proper interviews are included. The ones that we shot must be on there or something. I guess that's what was on the disc. I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. It's so long ago. I can't remember what ends up coming out on the disc.
And what kind of responses did you get from the film from fans? Were they taken with it?
Oh yeah. I mean, from what I remember, people really liked it. I have a friend who's a massive, massive fan, and he's always told me it's his favorite Stones movie of them all. Like he's watched it like 100 times. He loves it. He just likes getting high and putting it on and pretending he's there. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
In terms of the path you took after that, then what kind of part did that play in what direction you would take next after that?
Well, it was, it's a step along the way, right? I mean, between Scott Walker and this, like, oh my God, like I got so lucky um, to nab two subjects like this. I mean, it Well, it started a great relationship with a production company and a producer that really changed my life. I gotta say, I mean, the Stones aside, it really was a relationship with a producer and a production company and a team of people, um, that carried on, and uh, we just kept going. We just kept cranking them out. I had no agent or manager. I just I didn't need them. They kept feeding me work. It was
Yeah.
incredible. It was a little golden age. It was really cool. Um, Honestly, like when I met the producer the first time we met, John said to me, "Look, mate, we haven't made a shit film yet, and I don't plan on starting now, right?" I'm like, okay, so good way to. And by the end, like it was, we were just all fast friends, and we were just all so pleased with how things turned out. We just kept working together. I think what was next?
The other stories you worked on was Backstreet Boys, X Japan. You mentioned the Skinnerd one,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it's all music focused.
All music focused for a good period, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, I mean, it's after Stones. I mean, I didn't really, yeah, Jocko. It actually did take a bit um, for things to ramp back up. Um, like I'm looking at the list now. I mean, Jocko came out in 2015. I'd say like a year or so after Exile, we started working on Jocko. Um, I think, yeah, and that came out after and Backstreet. I ended up working with Pulse, but like we really teamed up again. Really got a groove on with the Jack X Japan documentary. That was another one John brought to me. And we were debuting that in Cannes, and at night I was pitching the Leonard Skinner thing. I mean, and then the Judy Garland picture happened after that. Another like weird left field kind of thing that I'd never in a million years think I would want to do. And we just found this unbelievable pocket of archive, with the estate of her third husband, Sid Left, that ends up giving you a great deal of very cool story. Anyway, long story short, some great music films followed, and it was an excellent team of people to work with. And yeah, we're getting back together and doing it again.
Well, your most recent one you mentioned right at the beginning was the Rock Hudson, All That Heaven Allowed documentary.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you find it wading into his life and personality and history?
That was incredible. It was really neat to do something that wasn't music for a change, to tell a historic story of old Hollywood, but also tell a story of, a closeted gay man in the 50s and 60s, and then, getting into the AIDS crisis of the early 80s and finding a social and political point to focus in on that had been lacking, I think, in the work. So that was really meaningful to me. And the producer on that, George Shignall, she had been the head of production at Passion Pictures. So she had, you know, ran Stones and X Japan and Skinner, all those films. So we had a long history.
Hmm.
And once some of those producers all went their separate ways, we all kept in touch and kept working together. So again, a brilliant team of people. It was her and Will Clark, who runs Altitude Films, which is a brilliant company. They kind of developed it and brought it to me. Um, and we're back in that situation of like just a great team and an amazing opportunity to work with some great archive and
Yeah.
tell a cool piece of history, entertainment history and queer history. And it was excellent. It was great. And Rock did make one album,
All
which is
right.
horrible. So we managed to sneak in one of his songs during the end credits. It fits perfectly in there. Um, but it was interesting not having music as a story crutch,
Hmm.
you know, to hang a lot of the emotion on, which you find is very easy to do when you have a body of work to work with, or a great album. So in this instance, it was the films that had to help tell the story, and we just worked with it in that way. So yeah, it was great.
So with all the access that you had, like you did with the Stones, you were working with Rock Hudson's estate. So have you become a professional kind of balancer of creative freedom as a director and the pressures that they might put on you to control the narrative?
Well, I think that's everybody that does this job, like you have to find that balance. So much of the job is diplomacy. There's always cooks in your kitchen trying to fuck with you.
Yeah.
But when you have a strong producer that is really about protecting the director's creative ideas, it's everything. Like it keeps it so on track. And I mean, Rock Hudson was very different. We had just very few people in the mix. We were all moving in the same direction. HBO documentary films, probably one of the best teams to work with that are so director driven and supportive. It's not always like that. There's always battles to fight, but yeah, I mean, again, they're all like they're all jobs, but you find your way in such a way that you're completely passionate about it while
Yeah.
you're doing it. And if you're lucky, you create something great that informs and sustains you. Like I've learned so much about these artists, and they've enriched my life in all these ways. Introduced me to things and new ideas and new music, old music, all this stuff. It's great. It's been really amazing. So,
So aside from being just jobs that you've been offered, is there something that connects them all? Is there a common thread that draws you to certain subjects?
well, I just like creative people. I like figuring out what makes them tick, and we really try to get into the creative DNA of the artist in such a way that it informs how we make the film. Um, that's sort of the tactic, you know. And it's just about that act of creation, and everyone has a story to tell, you
Absolutely.
know, like the Backstreet Boys. Like, if you put a gun to my head, I would never have said, sure, I'll make a film on the Backstreet Boys. And then lo and behold, we're in the middle of it doing it, and you're like, wow, there's so much narrative, there's so much story, there's so much commonality between things I never would have expected.
Hmm.
They're just people who they're just guys who wanted to sing. You know what I mean? That's all they wanted. To them, in their minds, they were not a boy band. They were a vocal harmony group. You know what I mean? And my God, you stick them in a like there's a piece of archive we found of them rehearsing before they're famous. They're about to go on stage to perform to a bunch of middle school girls in a gymnasium or something. And they're just in like a locker room that's got that great echoey acoustic vibe. And they're just warming up, singing in this 5-part harmony, something or other. And you're like, your jaw hits the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my Lord, these guys are so good. It sounds ridiculous, like the Backstreet Boys, right? Like, oh my God, but respect. Like these guys they grinded it out for years, just like a band in a van playing gigs and dive bars. They did the same damn thing. It was a broken down bus, and they were playing to high schools across the country for no money for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like there's all these, and just the narrative behind their origins. It's all story. It's all narrative. It's all someone with a creative drive who wants to achieve something through their art, right? I mean,
Hmm.
scrub all the other stuff away, and that's what you're left with. And that's a common thread through all of them, really. It's you're always finding your way in, and even winding back to like the Cinemania film. At the heart of it, it's really just about an obsessive love of an art form,
Yeah.
right? These are 5 people who went to the movies every day, all day for their entire lives, 4 or 5 movies a day without fail, like consuming cinema almost to the detriment of their physical and mental health. You know what I mean? So that that drive is in there throughout all these films, right? Like you look at Yoshiki of Ex Japan, his obsessive drive to create and battle what appears to be a curse that takes the lives of people around him and almost destroys him physically, yet he carries on, right? How?
Hmm.
Why? It's this some unseen force, right? That's in the music, that's in a musician, that's in an artist. It's all there.
Yeah.
So, there's a thread that goes all the way through everything.
And is there a dream artist that you would love to explore in a documentary? A
Oh,
musician or someone that you
geez.
feel is deserving of a revelatory movie?
That's the worst question because I feel like either someone's already done it and I'm mad, or it's something I know will never happen. I don't know, actually. I feel like I've checked so many boxes. Um, I you know, it breaks my heart that the 500-hour long Prince documentary is never going to see the light of day. Um, that's a tragic story. And you wonder if it's ever going to come out or if they'll ever let anyone in again. With an artist like that, I feel like there could be 10, 20 films. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, just give me a 3-year period and let's make a film, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think like, can there be another Bowie movie? Could we get back in there in that archive?
I
There's been
think the
enough,
world needs
could there,
one.
there's been enough goddamn Beatles movies. You know what I mean? It's like, give me a break, guys. Can we find someone else to explore here? Like I don't see why there's a few of those artists that I feel like are evergreen where you could keep finding stories. I mean, the Stones have been great at mining their history for great movies. And there was what was that one that was a little while ago? It was like a live film slash. It was like kind of a concert slash documentary of their South American tour.
Ole,
The
ole,
hell was
ole.
that? That was wicked, right? That was
That was
so
so good.
cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. Really, really like that. See, it's like there's opportunities to keep telling these stories in different ways. So yeah, I mean, I would just like retread, like give me Prince, give me Bowie, um, the obvious ones, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. There's like a million. I mean, every freaking 80s band that I obsessed on, I could sit down and do a movie. It's like if Robert Smith would get out of his own way and just let me do the Cure film. Hello, maybe one day, doubt it, but
Well, let's hope he's listening.
no, it'll never happen.
Is music going to be the direction that your work's going to take henceforth? Is there anything
Well,
in the pipeline?
it's it's always a little bit of both. I have a few things cooking. One's a big 80s-ish music film. I'm doing something about a major American comedian. We're doing I mean, my God, I'm always going to keep the music in the mix. It's my sweet spot. I love it. It's fun. Um, but always pushing out and expanding and looking for other great stories. It's just great. I just like these artists, or I mean, the Rock Hudson showed me like, look, you can apply all of these same skills and tricks and tactics and collaborations to anything really. Um, so yeah, off we go. More to come.
Well, that brings us on to 5 by 5, our 5 regular questions I ask everybody to finish off our
Oh,
conversation with a bit of quick fire thinking. So,
oh
firstly,
no.
what is your favorite Rolling Stones song?
I'm gonna have to say, um, can you hear me knocking?
What is your favorite Rolling Stones album?
Sticky fingers.
What is a deep cut or underrated Stones track that you think deserves more love?
Oh, I love Crazy Mama. I think it's such a jam. One of my faves. I love the Black album. Again, it's like, how old was I when I bought that? Like when did that come out? 70. I was probably 9, 8 or 9. I don't remember. But like, yeah, I think it's always like it's the Charlie of it all.
Yeah,
So what you know what I mean?
the
Like,
rhythm.
oh, it's got a great break in that one, right?
Crazy
I
Man
don't
was a
know.
great jam for a 9-year-old.
It's so good. I still go back to it. I put that on and play along. I try to play along to Charlie, and he's so simple, but it is just not as easy as it seems. That's why he's so great.
In your opinion, what makes the Rolling Stones such an enduring and influential band?
I would say it's a deep respect and love of the roots of their music that keeps it fresh, and it's those opposing poles of creativity. I mean, Keith says it best in the movie. I'm rock, he's roll. No, he's rock, I'm roll. That's it, right? Nick's rock, I'm roll. I mean, that's the heart of it, isn't it? It's the tension, the eternal tension in the yin and yang that like pulls apart and pulls together. It's you'll never find anything like it. And when you find that, like that's at the heart of every great band, I think.
And if you could describe the Rolling Stones in just 3 words, what would they be?
Classic bad ass motherfuckers. That's 4 words. Sorry. I don't know.
I'll take it, don't you worry.
Take it. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time, Stephen.
My God, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for reaching out.
So there we have it. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please follow or subscribe to Lip Service wherever you get your podcasts. And I warmly encourage you to leave a rating or review because it really helps the show reach new listeners. You can find Lip Service on all the socials at Stones Lip Pod, where we share news, extra content, and all things Rolling Stones. Thanks again, and look out for the next episode very soon. Till the next time, we say goodbye.